we can agree that there are lots of changes over the 1,000 years we're talking about. But if you look at a peasant living in 5th century Gaul, and you look at a peasant living in France in 1750, is their life very different? And if you look at the great majority of the population, are they living very differently than they live in 1700 than they live in 600? In some ways, yes. In other ways, not at all. When does wealth change? The Roman Empire was able to field enormous armies and build fantastic cities because they were able to skim the wealth, small bits, from very large numbers of people. If you look at the Middle Ages, there's only certain times and certain places where governments had that capacity. In most places, they didn't. And so the kinds of investments that would have been necessary to change warfare in any significant way didn't exist. In most places, in most times, polities are small, kings and princes are poor, and they just don't have the opportunity to change things very often. When you do see the accumulation of wealth again, in the 14th century and the 15th century, when you see the Kingdom of France grow, for example, you see a return to some of the norms that you had under the Romans. So in the I don't think it's an accident that in the 15th century is when you see the reemergence of what you could think of as standing armies of a Roman style, whereas during most of the medieval millennium, you have basically militia forces because no one could afford anything else.